Hello, Brett. How are you doing?
Hi, Sandra. I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, good. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast because I'm so inspired by you. But let's start off with what led you to take that leap from your stable IT career into full-time financial coaching?
Yeah, so I would say the short answer is really that I just wanted to help people. As I started getting into coaching, I realized that I just really loved helping people with their money. So I loved seeing people like either see the light bulb go off and see them start to understand a concept, or just see them go from uncertainty to like feeling confident with their money. And I also just noticed that like talking to people about their money and helping them energized me. Like when I got done with those meetings, I just came away like ready to go run a marathon.
Oh, really? So, I mean, same like me, where I'm doing it maybe in the off times after work, after your 40-hour a week day job, you found it energized you instead of making you more tired. And
Exactly. So I feel like I would come home from work and just be like, okay, I'm kind of exhausted, just had a long, full day at work. And then I would go get on a call and be like, I would get off and be like, holy cow, I could go run a marathon right now. Like, I know it's 10 o'clock at night, but I'm ready for a new day.
see, and that's how I describe it to people because when people ask, how can you do something on the side outside of a day job? That's the same feeling. You feel so energized and pumped up, and it's all worth it. Just to add some more context, I'm sure people can hear a little bit of the background noise of your kids. How did your family help you, or how did you kind of talk about that decision with them? Do they even notice a difference?
So my kids are both small, so they don't really know a difference.
Yeah.
Or I should say they probably won't ever remember pre-coaching versus now that I am coaching. But in terms of with my wife, this was a conversation like we had a lot about where it was like how do we know it's the right time to make the jump to full-time
Mhm.
coaching, or how do we even know it like makes sense for us to do that? So like the fact that I do have a family and have people relying on me, I feel like it kind of added a little bit of pressure to the decision of like, the
Yes.
income and having the money to be able to provide and, just have money to live.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. When you have people relying on your income, and it's interesting. So your kids never are like, Daddy, you seem like either you're happier or you're at home a lot, or they've really not noticed.
They're so small that I don't think it, and when I left my job a year ago, at that point they were both like really small. I don't even think they'll never know the difference.
It's kind of crazy because you've changed the whole family tree and trajectory of maybe their lives too. But yeah, they don't quite realize it yet. They will one
Exactly.
day.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It'll be fun to tell them one day about like how scary it was and how big of a transition it was.
Yes, and they'll learn so much from you because I'm sure they'll go through some type of moment like that where they're scared and they want to step out into something, and now you actually lived it and you can tell them a little story about it, right? Yeah.
Exactly, exactly.
So, was there like a specific moment you decided? Was it a culmination of a lot of moments? Like, how long did it take for you and, of course, your wife and your kind of your family to decide that you're going to leave your career?
So, yeah, I wouldn't say it was one moment specifically, but it really was the culmination of lots and lots of moments over multiple years. So, it's one of those things that it's been interesting where as my wife and I have looked back on the journey, where we've seen just little conversations or interactions with people that have really steered us in this direction, just little bits at a time, where it's kind of guided us towards this decision that we've made. And even say we're religious, we've had a lot of spiritual
Mhm.
experiences even where it's like we've really felt like this is the right thing for us to do and the right path for us to go down, and we really feel like we've been led specifically to this path. So that's I think that's been something that we've really drawn on a lot when it has gotten hard, or when maybe things have seemed uncertain, where we've kind of gone back to that and been like, okay, we've gone back to this like journey that we've been on and all of these moments that have led us to here, to be like, okay, we really do believe this is the right thing for us, and that like this is where God wants us to be.
Yeah, I think that does play such an important role. I didn't realize until I left my job earlier this year, and it's when you truly can put your fears and you have real faith. It's easy to say you have it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and to know there's a bigger plan. Yeah.
Exactly. It's one thing to say it and then another thing to be like it.
Yeah. So before you left, what were some of your biggest fears? I know you and me, because when I was unemployed, I was asking you about medical insurance, and I'm sure
Mhm.
you had to look into and address that. You know, beyond just some of those logistical things, what was your biggest fear?
Yeah, so there were really two main fears I would say that I had. The first one was just not being able to provide for my family potentially. That worry of like what if.
Yes.
Um and that, again, that's scary just having little kids at home and knowing like they have needs. And like with my wife, we've lived a pretty comfortable life. We've never really needed before. So like that was scary. Like you said, kind of jumping out into that unknown. That was definitely a scary thing. And I didn't want to let my wife down, on
No.
this crazy idea of mine, you know? So that was one of those things that did worry me. I would say the other main fear that we had was just like, what if this does fail?
Mm,
What do I tell my coworkers? I just left this job.
yeah.
What do I tell them? What do they think? What do I tell my family? What do I tell my wife's family? It's like these people like,
I,
why would you leave such a good situation for something that you have no idea how it's going to work out? That was felt a little bit scary to me, and that those were things that like my wife and I had to talk through and really come to terms with the reality that like those things may or may not happen and we have to be okay with that.
okay. But it does sound like you stepped into it really looking at what's the worst that could happen, looking at all the fears that you had instead of, you can kind of make it seem bigger in your mind than it really is. But also, I mean, I guess worst case would be maybe you would go back to your career and your job, right?
Yep, exactly. And that's one of those things that we did talk about where it was like, if that's the worst thing that could happen, that's not a terrible thing. If I
It
just go
isn't,
back
yeah.
to my yeah, it's like I was totally happy and enjoyed doing what I was doing. It's like if that's the worst case scenario, that's pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. Tim Ferriss, he does this fear setting exercise. It's his most famous TED talk. And he talks about that. Instead of setting all these goals and outlining them, talk about your fears and like what's the worst case and what would I feel like if I didn't do this? And it's like putting it down on paper and realizing some of them aren't as bad as you think.
Exactly. And I think that was huge for us where it's like it's not as risky as it seems, or it's not as scary as it may have seemed. It's not as bad as like what we may have thought. Exactly. I think yeah, you totally hit
Yeah.
that.
I'm curious, because you mentioned what would your coworkers think if you failed? And I think that's everyone's biggest concern, especially people that are very career oriented, especially tech people. It's very hard to take any type of break. We get stigmatized a lot for taking any time off from your career. So, did you hear cautionary things or from family members or friends?
It was one of those things nobody came out and said it, but I could definitely feel it where it was like this is one of those things that could totally tank a career. Or even branching out and posting on LinkedIn. Even that's one
Yes,
of those things that it kind of marks you a little bit in a way that it feels negative in the corporate world. Even
you're absolutely right.
to the
Yes.
point where I almost felt like it stunted my corporate growth in a way where it was like, we don't know if you're here or if you're there. And I don't think that's necessarily like a good or a bad thing, but like you said, going against the grain in this way, it is not the best thing for your corporate career. And I felt that way. And that definitely did make me a little bit nervous.
It's so interesting you talk about that because, yeah, I'm sure being in IT, people want you to post more about IT topics or the search you're getting or what are you studying for? What's the next thing? And
Mhm.
same like me, where I post about money content and it's more my personal branding, right? Like how yours is your own personal branding. But hear that from a lot of corporate people. They're so scared to post anything that's not like basically company cheerleader stuff or like very career oriented to show how ambitious they are outside of work and what are they doing. It's true. You've seen people, there are stories on LinkedIn where people get fired for the content they write on LinkedIn from their companies.
I would say preparing mentally for not having a paycheck or stepping away from a steady paycheck. I think what we had to do is we really had to just talk together about like what like will happen if there is a month or, some time where we don't have money coming in.
Hmm.
We really talked through like, here's the plan that we have. We bolstered our emergency fund. We doubled it from what it was before to the point where
Mm.
we knew with that amount of money alone, we'd be okay for a while. But then we also talked about like, okay, what are some of the other like contingencies or other things we could do if, money didn't come in for an extended period of time. So I think mentally that was really helpful for us to not necessarily say like we will pull out all this money or draw from this money, but knowing if something does happen, like we're in a position where this would not necessarily ruin us, but like we could potentially survive for a certain amount of time. Or we even talked about like other ways that like I could potentially go make money on the side,
Mm.
where it's like then I can, have like a part-time job where I am earning a little bit of money as well as doing coaching in some of those other hours. Just we really talked through a lot of the different scenarios. And I feel like being prepared that way just helped us prepare emotionally and mentally to be okay, for any of the different things that may have come up.
Yeah, I love that. You had a plan for the backup plan.
Exactly. Lots of contingencies. That's definitely my personality for sure.
Yeah, but it's nice when you don't have to resort to them. But I know they talk about 3 to 6 month emergency fund. But when I had my little career break, it was nice to have a whole year set aside that was not invested, that I could touch if I needed to. I didn't have to, or most of it, but it's nice having it there.
Exactly. I think just that just took a lot of the stress off and I feel like added to the peace of mind that,
Yeah,
like you said,
that's more important than anything. Yeah, it's a peace of mind more than you need to go eat through all that money. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Well, it's been about a year since that happened, and I'm sure there's been ups and downs, entrepreneur life. Were there some moments of doubt? And maybe could you talk about how did you keep going when you were maybe doubting yourself?
So yes, like there have been lots of moments of doubt. And I want to make that clear where it's like it wasn't one of those things where I left my job and then rode off into the sunset. But there have been lots of moments where I'm thought like, oh man, like I may have to go back to a job at some point. Like
Yeah.
things didn't happen immediately, in the way that maybe I had hoped or even that people had said like, yeah, once you dedicate yourself to this full time, everything just kind of clicks. And like that definitely wasn't the case for me. So for me, what I've done in those moments is I've gone back to why did I make this decision in the first place?
Okay.
And like my wife and I will talk through that and be like, okay, here are all the things that led us up to this point. And just remember those things. Remember why we made this decision. We'll even just go back to those those like spiritual feelings and confirmations where it's like, yes, this is what you need to do. And that's been helpful for us as well. And what I'll say is like that didn't necessarily eliminate the doubt or make the doubt go away. But what it has done for us is it's provided moments of clarity and peace to be like, okay, this hasn't been easy, but even in the midst of the doubt, we're going to keep going. So yeah, definitely, like I've definitely had moments of doubt. And in those moments of doubt, what I've had to do is really go back to why I made the decision that I made to leave my job.
Mhm.
And as I've done that, that's been one of those things that it doesn't necessarily get rid of the doubt, but it helps me to remember
Um,
like this is why I made that decision and why this is important to me. Another thing that I've done is I've gone back to just look back at all the moments where I feel like I've been guided toward this decision and to this path.
mm,
That's also really helped me again just to feel confident and remember like, okay, I really do believe that God has led me to this path. And I feel like I've had moments where even where he's told me like everything's going to be okay. And so in those moments, it doesn't necessarily just get rid of all the doubt where I'm like, okay, I don't doubt ever again. but it's helped me just feel confident and really just feel peace in the midst of the doubt. And I
Mm.
think that's been the biggest thing for me is when those doubts come, just to try and lean on some of those experiences and those things that I have felt in the past to be able to just keep moving forward in spite of the worry or the doubt.
Yeah, I like how you said they're going to come, those doubts and fears. It's not that you change your mindset so much and you're never going to fear or ever doubt yourself, but how do you deal with it? And I also love how you addressed, sometimes you hear really bad social media advice that says if you quit your job and you have your back against the wall, that you can make it happen. And I've never thought that was great advice for everybody. It might work for some people. Not starving is nice.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of those things I've heard that as well. I've heard a lot of people just say,
Yeah.
like, just go quit your job because, yeah, exactly what you said. When your back's up against the wall, you'll find a way.
Yes.
And it's one of those things where I'm like, man, there's so much more to it than just quitting your job. There's a lot of preparation. There's also just, I don't know, like you said, maybe that could work for some people, but I think for me, that definitely is not something that would have been okay.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we talked so much, we planned so much, we figured out how it was going to work and how we were going to make it work before we pulled the plug.
Yeah, and it might just be more of our technical type of backgrounds where we plan and overplan, but I
Yeah.
also think it's to our asset and our benefit. And there's people saying, when my back's, I mean, maybe that was like Alex Hormozy when he was like right out of college sleeping in a gym. It's a totally different situation, right?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So how did you stumble upon your niche of serving, well, as couples and I think families now, and it's evolved even a little bit more. So tell us a little bit about that evolution.
Yeah, so initially I just kind of worked with anyone who needed financial help.
That's everybody.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that's probably what most people do is they kind of just start broad. But there was one couple that I worked with specifically that they told me they said we've been married for over 10 years and we've never ever had a financial conversation that didn't end in some sort of an argument or a fight
Mm.
until after we worked with you. And that was one of those moments where I was just like, holy cow, like I don't feel like I did anything, super amazing or super impressive to help them, but to see and hear about that kind of result that changed the way that I saw helping people with personal finance. Where I was like, this is more than just money. This really is like, it can be couples and families and potentially, the difference between them getting divorced and staying together and being able to talk to each other. So it just really changed the way that I thought about personal finance after that, and even changed like how I wanted to help people. Where I was like, I don't just want them to have more money when we finish working together. I want them to really, like, for couples to be on the same page, to be able to talk about money together, to be able to, dream about what they can do together and not feel like one of them is being micromanaged or controlled, which I think unfortunately can often feel like that's the case.
Yes, yes. And now, more lately, you've been talking about traveling for families, and tell us about that.
Yeah. So one of the things that I noticed is a lot of people they wanted to get their finances in order so that they could travel more. And that
Mhm.
was one of those things for me that I was like, yeah, that's a big motivation for myself and for my wife as well, is like we want to, be stable and like be comfortable with our finances. But even beyond that, we want to be able to take our kids places and experience things with them and like really feel like we're making the most and getting the most out of life. And for us, travel is a big part of that. So I love being able to share that with other people where it's like, we're not just working together so that your bank account has bigger numbers or so that your investments have bigger numbers.
Mhm.
We're doing these things with a real purpose in mind. And if for some people that's travel, I love being able to talk about that with them. And what I've found is for a lot of people that I've worked with, travel seems to be one of those kind of hot topics for them.
Yeah, it's something everyone wants to do more of, and it's interesting how people don't properly plan or budget for it or have the finances. And it's such a shame because time goes by so fast. And like my son's 19, and before you know it, your kids will be adults too.
And that's what everyone tells us. And so that's one of our things where it's like we want to just be able to spend time with them now. And, and
Yes.
instead of this idea of like I can't wait until they grow up and we have more time or they're easier to travel with, but it's like let's do it now. And sometimes taking two little kids on an airplane is crazy and wild, but like it's stuff that I feel like we always come home with fun stories and it's something we just genuinely love to do.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's such great memories. It gets everyone off their devices.
Yeah.
I think about some of the things I've learned about my son just from being on because you're kind of stuck in each other's confines for so long. I mean, you don't have it yet. When your kids get older, they will want to be away from you a lot more, even in their own room in your own house. But it's just you're all together. You get to detach from work, the internet, your phone. It's really the best. It's not even about where you're going all the time either.
No. Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what you said. It's just that family time, uninterrupted,
Yeah.
getting away from the routine of every day. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I know it's only been a year since you've become, officially self-employed and left the corporate life, but looking back, what do you either regret or wish, or what have you learned since then?
So, a few things that I would say that I've learned, and I wish I had learned them faster or sooner.
Hmm.
Um, and I should say in some ways, like I know the way things have worked out is great, and I'm very happy with how it's worked out. But if I could go back and like learn something faster, it would be a few things. Number one, I come from like a data background. That's what I used to do. Is I was a data analyst, and so we did a lot of analyzing of sales cycles and just sales metrics and things. I
Yeah.
wish I had implemented that in my own coaching practice sooner. And
Yeah.
not to say that like I was just flying completely blind, but I definitely could have had like more rigor in how I tracked things and how I looked at my business to say like, okay, you know, from like an analytical data mindset, we used to talk to sales teams to say like, okay, if your revenue goal is X, how many conversations do you need to have? How many demos? All these different things. I wish that I had approached my business that way sooner. And as I have approached my business that way, it's really just helped me shed a light on like, okay, this is where my gaps are and this is what I need to really focus on, for the next week or
Hmm.
two if I want to start hitting the numbers that I want to hit. Um not th- not that it's all about the numbers, but there is an aspect of like
Yeah.
you need to earn a
It
certain
gets you
amount of
out of your
money.
feelings, because there are times when, it's funny. I have the same experiences too, where there was a time I didn't track my business finances, which is crazy because I'm like to the penny in personal finance. And
Yep.
then when I start tracking my business finances, I'm like, whoa, they tell a story. All the data tells a story, right? And it instead of you thinking like, oh, I'm the worst or I'm the best, and it's like, no, if I do, 100 reach outs, I should probably have 10, you kind of get your numbers down and
Exactly. And that I think that is if I could have learned that earlier, that, would have been a
Yeah.
very powerful thing.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of people that can
Yeah.
relate with that. And the irony is, we do it for these multi-million-dollar corporations that we work for, right?
Yep.
Like we manage their finances, their resources, we do the planning for them. But sometimes for like our own business, we don't do the same. Maybe it's just because the numbers seem smaller, or because like we we're talking about, you have such a passion to help people, right? You're like, I don't want to make it about numbers and money. But then at a certain point, it's a hobby. Or your wife's like, why won't you go back to work and earn some money if you can't make this happen? Yeah.
And I think that's exactly like I think you hit it on the head where it's like I didn't come into this business to run a business per se. I
Yes.
did it to help people. But, you know, I think exactly what you're saying though, it's like you have to treat it like a business. And I think maybe that is one expectation that I came into just very naively, where I was like, yeah, I'm gonna quit my job and I'm gonna help people with their money. And the reality is I quit my job and now I'm running a business. And fortunately a good part of that is helping people and I love that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more to it, than just getting on calls and talking to people. There is the business aspect of it, and that's just been a really important thing to really understand better and like you said, be able to like understand what the data is telling, what story that's telling, and then
Yes.
make smart decisions based on that.
Yeah, yeah, and I wouldn't say no financial coach wants to just make money, but I feel it's such a mission-driven type of thing where people kind of don't want to make it all because we're like, oh, we're helping these people with their money, and we don't want to, price gouge them. And I know nobody does, but it's interesting how when we have that heart for it, it's more your passion, your mission, more than like a job. You can kind of be more clinical, like, yes, I would like this salary
That,
for my skill set, my time.
that's exactly how I feel. It really is. It's so mission driven and so, just that desire to help is so big that, yeah, it's easy to kind of set aside the business aspect of it and to
Yeah,
just want to focus on people. Yeah, I think you're exactly right on that.
yeah. So, what are you doing right now in your business? I know you work with people one on one. Any other models or things coming in the future for you?
So the big thing right now is one-on-one. In terms of like things that are upcoming, I'm I'm always trying to figure out like what is the most effective way to help people.
Yes.
One of the worries that I have is like, I never want to work with somebody for an amount of time. And then after we're done working together, they go back to their old habits or their old ways. So
Hmm.
it's stuff like that where it's like, how do I not only help people now, but how do I make this a lasting change? So that's kind of been one of the things that I keep experimenting with is like, how do I structure my offer in a way that is conducive to a more lasting, complete change? So that's kind of a few ideas that I've had is like, do I kind of start out with like a certain number of coaching sessions together where we lay the groundwork and then we start elongating the meetings where it's like, okay, we're going to do once a month or once a quarter, stuff
Mm.
like that. So that's kind of what I've been playing with is just trying to figure out what is going to be just the very best for my clients to make that true lasting change.
Oh, I see. Yeah, because you worry that they'll fall off the wagon. And it's interesting because there are people who have different philosophies about whether you should work with someone a short amount of time and get them going, and you don't want to create this dependence. But then there's other people that really believe in why can you not have this more lifelong type of relationship? You know, our own personal finance journeys, we're still evolving, growing, learning new things, and it never really stops.
Exactly. And it's interesting that you mentioned the dependency versus I just want to get you on your feet and let you go do your thing because
Yeah.
I do think a lot of coaches have this mindset of like I don't want there to be this lifelong dependency. I want to make you capable and confident in your own finances. And so that's kind of another thing that I've wrestled with a little bit where it's like I don't want to create that lifelong dependency, but I also don't want to have my clients feel like they're just being thrown to with the wolves after we work together, and just figure out
Yeah.
like a more smooth transition to from going from like weekly meetings to just cold turkey. It's like seeing if we can go from weekly to monthly to quarterly, and just
You're
really
graduating out, maybe like
exact
graduating out of working with you instead of you're right, like, oh, we're at your last session, regardless of how well you've done, our time is over. But
exactly.
yeah, so where can people find you if they want to contact you or get in touch with you?
Yeah, so find me on LinkedIn, Brett Huntington. I'm pretty active there. So feel free to send me a message or a connection request. But I would say that's the best place to really get in touch with me.
Okay, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and I really enjoyed hearing your story. I'm so inspired by you.
Thanks, Sandra. Really good to be here.